Every veteran has a story. Stories of sacrifices, hardships, and triumph. Our veterans defend everything the United States represents: liberty, justice, and humanity. They embody American freedom, freedom of speech, religion, and the sanctity of the home and family. Our veterans possess the spirit and determination and will of eternal liberty to man, brought to this land by our forefathers. They have defended the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights. They preserve the voice of Abraham Lincoln, who echoed, "A government of the people, by the people, and for the people." They stood guard over our nation's land, home, schools, to ensure the safety for all of our citizens. They have provided the vigilance and watchfulness to ensure our freedom. They have made ultimate sacrifice despite their own discomforts, well-being, and peace of mind, to keep our nation safe from dictators and oppressors. Their service to our nation and to us ensures we spend eternity in the land of the free and home of the brave, for they are the brave, the epitome of patriotism, to protect what we as Americans hold dear: freedom. And now, it is my honor to tell you the stories of these war veterans who gave all these sacrifices for us. However, for me to tell you this story, we are not going to start in today's time. Instead, we're going to go back over 70 years ago. World War II began September 1st, 1939, when German leader Adolf Hitler unprovokedly attacked Poland. Soon after, war would be declared all across Europe.
Sein zu wissen, dass diese Zukunft restlos uns gehört. Und damit ein Symbol des Ewigen. Es lebe die nationalsozialistische Bewegung. Es lebe Deutschland.
America stayed out of the war, preoccupied with the Great Depression of the 1930s. However, on December 7th, 1941, Japan devastatingly surprise attacked Pearl Harbor, bringing America into the war.
President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
In 1944, Ernest Brewer was called to duty in the U.S. Navy Submarine Patrol.
No, it's in the North Atlantic, most in the Caribbean and over the English Channel and just wherever they need us. We had the one carrier and three destroyer escorts. Well, all we done is on submarines. Well, that's terrible. We go this way a while, and then we go this way. We never went in a straight line. We never had much problem with planes.
Emerson Farrell was called to duty in 1944. He served in the United States Army in Company A, the 37th Battalion, 4th Armored Division. He was a tank driver who served under General Patton.
Yeah, I went in, I was the youngest fella in the outfit, and my platoon sergeant called me Junior all the time, because I was so young. The outfit right at the Battle of the Bulge, Bastogne, Belgium. And that was one of the major battles, I guess, in World War II. And of course, made it through. Sometime in early been April maybe, I had one tank shot out from under me. Luckily, no one in there was hurt. Well, I didn't know I was going to be a driver. I knew I was going to be in a tank. I didn't know what I would be doing in there, whether it be a driving or a gunner. Or I just got my training and a little travel time, and they sent me right overseas. Took me to Bastogne, Belgium, and a big tank sitting there, and he said, "Son, you driver, I'll furnish you the gas and pay you $66 a month to do it." So I thought that was a good deal. Just about like this, you didn't have no leg room or anything. If you dozed off, maybe after a while your legs would get to hurting so bad you'd have to open the hatch and stand up a little while. Wasn't like home. In Luxembourg City sits, well, part of it's up on a big hill, part of it's down in the valley. And I had to take my tank back to Ordnance there in Luxembourg once. Early that morning, Patton was out walking up and down the hill there to get him a little exercise. That's the only time I ever saw him. I guess according to the news, he led his men across the Rhine River and all these things, but there wasn't too many across there ahead of me, and I don't think one of them was Patton. People. After the war was over, we had a bunch of prisoners. Well, I would take a dozen of them out by myself, out sort of cleaning up streets or something. Didn't have any problem with any of them. The bigger part of them were in there just because, like I was, just because I had to be or something, or needed to be. You ever hear of the Eagle's Nest?
Mm-hmm.
I've been there. It's plumb on top of this mountain. I don't know how tall it was, but I took advantage of the GI Bill, I guess, and that's been about my life since then.
I was down in North Carolina. Been in there a day or two. We just went in there for a little while. And boy, I got inside, buddy. You don't talk about celebrating. When they said that war was over, I didn't want to get killed after it was over, for sure. And I got inside, buddy. They just went wild. Oh, boy. Whew. Well, I had a wife and 3 little boys. So I had to get home.
World War II divided Korea into a communist northern half and an American-occupied southern half, divided at the 38th parallel. The war started when North Korea invaded South Korea. At this stage in the Cold War, it was essential for America to win because this was the first global stand against communism. Howard Whitley entered the Air Force in 1947 during the Cold War era between World War II and the Korean War. When the Korean War was at full swing in 1951, Mr. Whitley worked in the 98th Bombardment Group in the United States Air Force, many of which were bomb runs. Mr. Whitley worked in approximately 30 missions during his time serving in the U.S. Air Force. His job was to pull the cotter pins out of the bombs. April 12, 1951, Mr. Whitley was part of a mission involved in air attack over northwest Korea on a key railroad bridge. Although there was a loss of a B-29 Superfort and 2 other Superforts were damaged, they were able to reach friendly bases. Mr. Whitley said, and I quote, "We were at the mercy of 30 MiGs. All I could do was listen to the 50 caliber guns above my head. The AC told me to give off an SOS. We're hitting the wing tank. On fire. Do not know where? Somewhere along the route. We had taken 3 shell hits. We dropped our bombs on Sarawan, probably at the lowest altitude that we'd ever dropped. Otis Brown was called to duty in the United States Army August 10, 1951. He was a squad leader that was stationed at the Heartbreak Ridge in Korea, who was part of the 25th Army Division and 27th Wolfhound Regiments. On September 5, 1952, Mr. Brown was wounded at an action at Sandbag Castle. He was a recipient of the Purple Heart, one of the most prestigious medals given to the people serving in the armed forces. The Vietnam War was a Cold War-era military conflict that took place in Vietnam and Cambodia from November 1, 1955 to the fall of Saigon, April 30, 1975. It was a prolonged struggle between nationalist forces attempting to unify Vietnam, which remained split at the 38th parallel. North Vietnam was under a communist government, and the United States, with the help of the South Vietnamese, attempted to prevent the spread of communism. The U.S. Military Assistance Advisor Group trained South Vietnamese troops in response to communist insurgent activity in South Vietnam and terrorist bombs in Saigon. August 7, 1961, President Lyndon B. Johnson wages all-out war against North Vietnam.
Vietnam is so the scene of a powerful aggression that is spurred by an appetite for conquest. It is the arena where communist expansionism is most aggressively at work in the world today, where it is crossing international frontiers in violation of international agreements, where it is killing and kidnapping, where it is ruthlessly attempting to bend free people to its will. And into this mixture of subversion and war, of terror and hope, America has entered.
John Ramsey was a Vietnam vet who served from years 1966 to 1969. He was in the Army, 1st Aviation Brigade in Quien Nhân in the Central Highlands.
I served 1966 through 69. During that time, the draft was mandatory. Every young man was evaluated about the age of 19, and he received a draft certification. Well, during the time that I served, a lot of young men chose to go to Canada to dodge the draft, and they tore the draft cards up, went to Canada, and a lot of other people dodged the draft in other ways. When I went to have my physical for my draft in the military, the guy that I went with took pills the entire trip, 2.5 hours to the induction station. He took pills, and when he got to the induction station, his blood pressure was out of sight. So he dodged the draft and taking pills. So I'd received my draft notice shortly after that. Draft at that time was for 2 years service obligation. But I wound up joining the Army simply to stay out of the infantry. I didn't feel like I was infantry material, so I joined for an extra year, 3 years, and I was in Army aviation. My worldview changed tremendously. My view of politics and politicians changed, and I began to see other people, and that they had the same problems that in other countries that we had. I began to see that not everybody liked America, and not everybody liked America that lived in America either during that time. So my worldview was enlarged tremendously.
Saddam Hussein, leader of Iraq and longtime ally of the Soviet Union during the Cold War, invaded Kuwait on August 2, 1990. This opposition was condemned internationally and brought immediate economic sanctions against Iraq by the United Nations.
Just 2 hours ago, Allied air forces began an attack on military targets in Iraq and Kuwait. These attacks continue as I speak. Ground forces are not engaged. This conflict started August 2nd when the dictator of Iraq invaded a small and helpless neighbor. Kuwait, a member of the Arab League, and a member of the United Nations, was crushed. Its people brutalized. 5 months ago, Saddam Hussein started this cruel war against Kuwait. Tonight, the battle has been joined.
Sergeant Greg Perry enlisted in the military in July 1981, where he was stationed in Bamberg, Germany. Sergeant Perry had originally made plans to leave the military after serving 10 years, but unfortunately just days prior to his discharge, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. He was then deployed to the Persian Gulf, and that's where he remained until the war ended.
As soon as I was able, I talked my mom into signing my paperwork for me and went in the National Guard. Stayed in it 4 years and then went active duty. I was on a 747 over to Iraq. Another 24-hour flight. And we got over there and it was miserable. It was hot. We got there in the wintertime when it was cool. And they come up and then they drop down. And they got lucky and hit right where we were at. And part of that metal, it never broke the skin on my body. Never put a scratch on me. But I had my flak vest on, my armored vest. It went completely through it, but left the inner lining on it. And a couple of days later, I had a bruise all went across my butt and up my back, where they hit that, and my knees were messed up. But after the sergeant straightened out my knees, I was so scared and so much on adrenaline, I jumped back up, and I was manning a 50 cal machine gun. They call it the M2, which got the shells like that. And it wasn't 10 minutes after that, we had the engine turned off in it, and our APC started shaking. The ground started shaking. And you could hear a big roar coming. It's like, oh man. I said, we might as well bend over because we're gone. And I stood up and looked. And coming from the south, going north on the Highway 8, it was almost bumper to bumper, the M1 tanks. And they've got radio antennas about 15 foot tall. Some of them had rebel flags on them, most of them had American flags. I mean, it's a sight you'd never forget. And just hearing them and watching them turn that turret and just boom. And we actually watched them take out that airfield at Toledo. Well, over 21 years later, I finally got my broken back fixed. The plastic plates and the metal screws, rods all in my back now, which I'll have that forever. But at least I can walk. And when I came to an emergency room or recovery room, I looked down and I could wiggle my toes and my feet didn't hurt anymore. And it was hard to move my legs or anything else because of where they pulled the muscles away from them. I could move my knees up a little bit and the pain was gone. I knew then that I was fixed, that I could walk without hurt. And I cried because I had my legs back.
On September 11th, 2001, members of Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden, carried out the worst attack on Americans in U.S. history. Osama bin Laden, an extremist organization, had openly declared war on the United States and was determined to harm innocent people in the United States and around the globe. September 20, 2001, George W. Bush declared war on terrorism and focused on Al-Qaeda to protect all U.S. citizens and allies.
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand.
Several brave young men and women served in the Second Gulf War. Among them was Ronald Fife Jr. He was the recipient of the Purple Heart for the injuries sustained while serving our country.
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children.
Okay, being a veteran to me is an honor. It's a choice that I made years ago. It put a light on the fact of just being a veteran is not just being a veteran, it's about your country and how you feel about your country. And it gives me a sense of pride when I see the American flag due to my services and what it actually truly does mean to me. It's an honor, it really is.
Well, I don't know. I'm sort of proud that it was one. I think it was the duty of all of us young men back then to go to war if it was necessary, so I hope I did my part.
Well, I guess it means a whole lot.
Yeah, this freedom does mean a lot to me because I have seen the other countries that don't have the freedoms we do, and we've got soldiers now fighting still for our freedom, and they have been fighting since we came to America to get away from the dictatorship and the censorship, and we have the rights to do pretty much everything as we please. And in other countries, they don't have that right. It's like I said, I'm very honored to have been able to serve.
I did my duty. I did what my country asked me to do, and I'm proud to be a veteran.
Before I made this video, I always had a deep sense of appreciation of veterans and what they have done to ensure liberty in our community. You know, I grew up hearing stories of the Korean War from my grandfather. He was a chief petty officer of the Navy, And after visiting with some of these veterans and hearing some personal experiences, I have a renewed sense of gratitude and respect for those who have served. From hearing personal accounts and viewing actual veteran artifacts, I have a new perspective on patriotism that has truly opened my eyes to just a mere glimpse of the sacrifices they have made to ensure freedom. I know now that freedom truly is not free.